I'm Jeff Kaplan. I'm the game director of Overwatch. This is Chris Metzen.
I'm the creative director on Overwatch.
So, as you guys may or may not have heard earlier, we announced Overwatch. The things that we think are really cool is that not only is this, brand new Blizzard game that we're announcing here at BlizzCon, but it's also the first new universe for our players to sort of experience in a long time. I think Chris said it was 17 years, which was the Diablo universe, the last one that we introduced. The game is a team-based multiplayer action shooter. It features really dynamic heroes. They're doing crazy, epic, over-the-top abilities, and it's got a really strong focus on team play. And one of the things that we want to do with the game is really focus on the game design elements that can make this game more approachable. Something we like to do at Blizzard is take genres that we love, amplify the elements that we love in those genres, and then try to make that as approachable and accessible to as many people as possible. So that's kind of the quick overview. We're happy to take any questions you guys have.
Well said, Jeff.
Yeah.
So you guys talk really passionately about the idea that this is the first new universe in 17 years, and those universes that have that currently exist are explored to the nines. How do you intend to explore this, given the nature of the game itself, in that it's just a multiplayer game? I don't want to say just a multiplayer game. Do you know?
Yeah. No.
In a way, this had kind of occurred to me as a way to explain it. In the other games, they are immersive experiences where you're jumping into a world. You have an environment around you that you can explore. Even Diablo and WoW specifically, and there's story that goes along with it. It's the kind of current that kind of moves you through it, questing or whatever else. StarCraft's a little different, but not all that different. So if you look at those two elements, right, the kind of immersive world component of it all, and then the purely narrative component of it all, this is really like the narrative is kind of pulled out and will exist on its own. It will exist through, we're not really ready to talk about that yet. We've got some exciting stuff we're cooking up, so it's kind of a hard question to answer. But imagine we'll use various transmedia and what we hope is a lot of animation and stuff. We had a really fun time putting together that trailer. Hopefully you guys dug that this morning, and that feels good. We want to do more of that. So that's kind of where we're leaning. We don't have anything to specifically announce that way, but we really want the narrative to be able to breathe on its own. In an earlier discussion, Jeff had kind of made the distinction between sometimes for purposes of really optimized gameplay, you need to make a decision to, what's the verb, Jeff? You have to make a decision to
It's almost like sacrifice.
Sacrifice story for optimized gameplay, and I can tell you, trying to fit story into computer games for 20 years, it's really hard in terms of the flow of play and making sure you're balancing, game dynamics and the flow of a level, and then making sure the themes are playing out and the storyline's working out. You don't want either discipline to overcomplicate the other. So in this way, we thought a cool way of approaching Overwatch is let the maps be the maps. They're in a nerdy way, they're kind of out of continuity, so you can have 4 Winstons running around, right? That's obviously never going to happen in the core continuity. Saving the core continuity for different story expressions. So I'm kind of jumping around it because we don't have anything to announce today, but does that make any damn sense?
You're going to tell us later.
Yeah.
Well, is it going to be like followed by comic books, animated movies, novels, etc., etc.?
I'll tell you, I want it all.
The trailer indicated animated movies, it's screen animated movies.
I want it all. I want to conquer the earth. I want every person on earth to see these ideas. So we're still working on conquering the earth part. But yeah, we're exploring any number of things.
I know you briefly mentioned this in the big press conference early this morning, but since anyone can play any character regardless of how many there might be, so you might get 4 Winstons or 3 Widowmakers, how is that going to play out in terms of party balance in each of the maps?
Balance is always a concern for us, and we've had some interesting moments where we've been concerned about the balance, like somebody stacking too much. We have a really seasoned design team on this game who have a lot of experience. These guys date back to, War II, War III, StarCraft, StarCraft II, the World of Warcraft balance guys. So we have a lot of really great balance experience. So far, we've been lucky in the fact that most of the time when we have those deviant class compositions, oh my God, there's 6 Winstons, we've been able to tune it to where that's actually a detriment to your team, that most of the time you're not well-rounded enough to actually take objectives. There will always be cases, especially when you're playing non-competitively, where there could be moments where you could overstack for a situation. But so far the balance has been pretty good. What we're shooting for is that it feels really good to have 1 or 2 of any one hero kind of in the group. But when it starts to get in those questionable numbers, like, do we really want to see 4 of this guy, or 5 or 6, that's where the breaking point is for us, where we take it into the balance group and go, okay, what are we going to do to make sure players don't want to play this way?
I can appreciate the objective-based match play, but there are those people out there that are only interested in deathmatch, so much to the point where they might even forget that there's objectives involved and just worry about killing people. Was that a tough decision to eliminate that game mode altogether, or do you think maybe that's a mode that might be added later on?
I don't think my guess, who knows what will be added later on. I could see 10 years from now, like somebody quoting this moment where I say, deathmatch will never be added to Overwatch. In a lot of ways, you asked, was it a hard, it was actually a really easy decision. So it's a hero-based game, and we really wanted to have hero roles represented. That was super important to us, because we think that part of what's going to make the game very approachable to people is that sense of teamwork and working together. And in order to have those hero roles where you have stuff like a support class, those classes don't stand one-on-one. I don't really think Mercy would be competitive. As an example, if we just had a deathmatch mode, no one would ever play Mercy, and she would become obsolete at that point. So we talked about this with WoW class design a lot, that our goal was not that every class could beat every other class one-on-one, but that there was more of a rock, paper, scissors sort of design. And once the game becomes about deathmatch, then we lose that. So we understand that there's a lot of players out there that love deathmatch, and that's what they want to do, but we also feel like those players are really being served right now. But we also feel like there's a real desire for this team-based gameplay, objective-based gameplay, that a lot of people want to get to, and that's what's been really exciting about people coming and playing Overwatch for the first time who haven't played it before, especially when they get over that initial hump. They've been having a blast with it. You've had your hand up.
I was going to build upon this a little, because
Okay.
Blizzard has always had a very strong community-based, like they influence the games they play. Is it possible that this game will support dedicated servers where people can use game modes like deathmatch, or can have teams larger or smaller than 6v6, stuff like that?
That sounds like an awesome idea. At this point, the only thing that we've sort of announced, or I don't know if we've announced, but we are hosting the servers, which is really cool. And we think there's a lot of good that will come out of that. But the idea of like dedicated servers, maybe where you could tweak the game modes, that sounds like an awesome idea.
With you guys hosting the servers, I mean, this is going to be built upon Battle.net 2.0. Are we going to see stuff like clans and chat rooms, and obviously the community building stuff that the other games have as well?
We absolutely plan to pursue social features in the game. Mike Morheim has given all the game directors a mandate that he said, hey guys, we can do a better job with social features in the game, that our communities are most important thing to us. Why aren't we giving them, more ways of interacting together. So we'll absolutely add a lot of social features to this game.
I would just draw attention to the trailer for me, because you had the 2 kids in the trailer, and it seems like your philosophy with a lot of the, I call it cross-generational gameplay. I'm playing games with my kid now, Hearthstone and WoW with him, he's 8. Is that a target for you guys? Was that an approach going in? Because you talk about the hero-based characters and the idea that younger kids can get into this world you're building. I'm just curious what your approach was with that.
I think the kids in the intro, we talked about it quite a bit. We didn't necessarily want to suggest it's a game for 8-year-olds or whatever at all. I think we're always interested in, we want everyone to come and play. But as a shooter, I don't know, my 6-year-old, for instance, like, oh, I don't know, Dad, it's a little heavy. And I think we said it in the panel. The reason we chose the kids, that lens through which to view the world in the trailer is really more purely an affect of how we wanted to tell that story at the time. It was an idea we came up with, like, wow, we don't really do this. This is kind of outside of our wheelhouse, but it just felt awesome. Just kind of like our own inner 6-year-olds coming out and like, oh, I just love this idea. So it was really more of an affect of the trailer itself. We did talk to, like, will it create confusion? Will it look like the game is trying to, kind of be like all ages? I don't know that that's what we intend. If Rugrats play and dig it, outstanding. But we certainly didn't want to suggest that. I think you answered this smartly.
No, I think Chris really hit the nail on the head. I mean, we want the game to be as inclusive to as many people as possible. Obviously the game doesn't have a rating yet, and that it's still to be seen what that will be. But no matter what the rating is of the game, we as a team and as a company have our own moral compass. So you're never going to hear profanity in this game. No matter what the rating we get. It's not like, oh, we got the M, so therefore we get to drop F-bombs. Like, we have our own moral compass, and the way we talk about it on the team, and just between me and Chris is, I want to play this game with my stepdaughter, and I don't want to cringe when we sit down to play it together.
And I think another part of it is, too, is it's a weird one to talk about. I mean, it sounds very judgmental, and I don't mean it to be, but there's a lot of cynical stuff out there. There's a lot of cynical entertainment, big bombastic, crazy stuff going on, and there's a time and a place for everything. But we wanted this thing at this phase to feel as non-cynical as possible, and it's a shooter. That's a weird thing to try for. But I think when you play, like, it has its edge. You got Widowmaker up there taking headshots, like, whoa, there's consequence. But there's classes there's heroes like Tracer and Winston they're just all flavor and light and hope and optimism, and that's a big part of this for us. And you got your Reapers and your heavy characters or whatever, but we just want this thing to sing and have heart as much as a shooter can. That's where we're going. And it's a strange kind of choice, but that's what motivates us. We want it to feel like a kind of a hopeful, aspirational kind of storyline. We used to say we want to build it in such a way that it feels like it's a future worth fighting for. Like, it's not dystopian, it's not apocalyptic. Oftentimes as creative geeks like us, we start thinking about the future and you just want to break stuff, you want to blow it up, you want to have cyborgs eating people and zombie apocalypse and all that. There is a time and a place for all of that. But we wanted this to stand out in such a way that it just kind of released your inner 6-year-old in a weird way, and we hope that it is doing that. But that's our true north, I think.
Yep. Gameplay-wise, you're already, given that the story and the narrative is going to be separately, you could say, you're like focusing a lot on that, saying that it's long-term and there's going to be a lot of products about that. But gameplay-wise, in video games, if we don't see a lot of serialization or sequels, we see a lot of updates. But it seems like you're putting a lot of care in each of the characters, so it's not like you can only throw heroes like, oh, okay, new heroes. So how do you plan to sustain this game long term and like without people getting bored of it, or just like saying, okay, I played it for 2 months, I'm bored, what's next?
I think we can create huge engagement around this game, and it just to sort of contradict the question a little bit. we're really good at making these heroes, and we can make them really fast. So I think there's a lot more to come. The team falls in love with every single one of the heroes. So I think there's a lot of things that we can do to create engagement. If you also look at our other titles, vastly different titles. Two great examples are World of Warcraft to Hearthstone. Besides being in the Warcraft universe, they kind of couldn't be further apart as game types, but hopefully there's an understanding that Blizzard cares very much about long-term engagement, and you can see it in both those games that any of those could have run the risk of, oh, I blew through the content, I'm done, and I'm out. But we have an ongoing dedication to our players that we're along for the ride. Mike Morheim talks about our games. Every single game is not just a one-off, put the box on the shelf, sell it, have the launch party, and on to the next one. Every single game is a dedication to our customers, and we're going to run every single game like a service. I mean, Diablo 3, they're working on the next huge patch for that game right now. So I just hope that players will trust in that Blizzard name, knowing that they've always served us with long-term, continuous updates. How about in the back?
Build on that, because so should we consider Overwatch as a shooter or as a universe? Because from what you were saying, and basically from what you were saying, you can kind of make a spin-off from it being a shooter, or you want to focus on it being a shooter?
It's in truth, it's a little bit of both. We look at it as a universe that can be expanded and driven forever. Infinitely expandable play box. I'm not announcing anything here, so speak theoretically. The first vehicle for people to explore this universe is this game. It has a very particular shape, but I love imagining that it could be any number of games based on this world. We're just doing this right now, but how rad would that be? That just makes me super happy. I think anything is possible. I especially think after the last couple of years of Blizzard, anything is possible. And we'll probably have fun batting ideas around, like, oh, where would this go? And tied to Jeff's last response, and the promise of that question is, Jeff talked about our heroes. Like our team's really good at designing these abilities and noodling out on the balance and all that stuff. Like these guys love that work. They live for that stuff. I want to see every character we